Learning system design in 2025 is more important than ever.
Is
It's
what
important that we understand really the other half of the software development job because I feel like a lot of people get the impression that this job is, like 90% code and 10% going out to eat, whatever crazy idea they think. That's not really that accurate. I would say that on any given day, and obviously this is heavily dependent on what type of code you're writing and what industry you're involved in. But I would say that I spend around maybe 20 to 30% of my day actually like physically writing code. And the other parts of my day are meetings, some form of design, um, meetings, diagramming, um, and honestly, just a lot of like business related things. And this is not unique to me. This is what happens as you kind of climb up the ladder in software development. It becomes less code and more design, architecture, and meetings and programming with other people through pair programming or some form of mentorship. Um, and this is what happens. And I feel like it's kind of a natural thing, right? And I feel like system design is kind of the is kind of the thing that marks the shift from just writing code to stepping out of that to being able to perform the other part of the job. System design is so important because it not only allows you to utilize all the things in code that you learned, but it allows you to think more creatively. And I really feel like this is why system design is the most fun part about software development because I feel like it gives you the most opportunity to be the most creative in your field because you can know all the syntax you want. You can know all the nuances of C sharp. You can know all the tricks in .NET. But if you can't make that and turn it into a system, then what's the point? But if you know how to use a queue, if you know how to use databases properly, if you know how to connect to them and you know how to wire them into a system to create something really, really robust and scalable, then I feel like that's where the fun part of this comes in because so many problems and so many decisions in code are going to be determined by the design of the system. So sometimes just knowing syntax for the sake of knowing syntax can lead you to make a design decision in your code that might not actually be the best fit for the broader scope of your system. And that's the hard part. And I feel like that's what happens when you begin to move away from junior developer into mid and senior is you begin to think more in terms of the system and you begin to ask yourself more broader questions about how this code is going to piece into the whole system itself. A number of good resources you can look at for learning system design: web scalability for the startup engineer and acing the system design interview. I'll have those books in the description, but they're uh, very good books, especially web scalability for the startup engineer. That's one of the best books that I've read in the past couple of years about this topic. If you haven't looked at it, if you haven't read it, definitely check it out. Again, I just found this like it was recommended through some other book I read and it was excellent. So definitely check that out. Like it helped me out a lot and honestly, I would read it sooner than later because it does a great job at just talking about system design components in a way that makes sense. And that's the hardest thing that I have. Like, that is so hard to find a book that actually talks about it in a non abstract way because you can read whatever you want. You can read all these fancy books, topics, whatever, but if they're so abstract that you can't, you have a hard time applying them to, the real world, then it can lead to burnout. It can make you feel like you're not really doing anything. And that is the never-ending problem with trying to find software development books is that some are so purely like academic that they lack any kind of practical like application. And that is like if you try to find software development books, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But I feel like web scalability for the startup engineer does a good job and not being too academic, but it's very practical. So I really feel like if you read it, it's not only going to help you obviously for the interview portion of the job, but it's just going to help you be a better developer. And I really feel like that should be your goal, right? Because the more you become confident in your decision making ability, the more you familiarize yourself with just what's available in the broader landscape of system design, then you're going to be so much more confident and you're going to be honestly excited to have system design meetings because you're going to be able to use what you know to propose legitimate changes to a system. And especially as you move more into cloud computing, whether that's if that's an AWS and you learn all their service offerings, you're going to be even more confident to be able to approach a system design interview in a confident way. And I really feel like this is the mark of moving from junior to mid-level developer, is that you're building your familiarity with system design and you're building your confidence to not only contribute to a conversation like that, but be able to frame in your mind the implications of a certain design of a system. And I really feel like it's very important, if you want to become or if you want to build your familiarity with system design, you just got to play around with it locally. You can spin up whatever queue, and like we do RabbitMQ on this channel. If you go back and watch my RabbitMQ series, you can spin up a RabbitMQ instance just using a Docker image. You can connect to that in .NET. You can do so much stuff. If you have an AWS like student account or something, you can mess with those services, but make sure you tear them down when you're done. Very important. You don't want to get any surprise. You don't want to run out of credits. And just honestly, just play around with it locally. I feel like you'll be surprised at like how much you learn just by trying to create some kind of local system yourself. If you go back and watch from a year and a half ago on this channel, I did an entire daily stand-up series where we made basically like this mock two-stroke engine simulator using Rust, .NET, and React. It wasn't really for like making a full-on like thing. It was really making a scalable system that can handle really, really high throughput data running locally on my M3 MacBook Pro. And we sent a million messages. We processed that in our Rust microservice. And that really taught me a lot. That taught me not only how to use Rust and its applicability to system design and services, but it honestly answered so many questions I had about asynchronous data flow and just how services communicate with each other in the context of a high throughput system. And so that was just like a super helpful thing to do. Like I'm so glad that I did that, and I would recommend anybody to try to make whatever kind of system they can and make it as complicated as you want. Don't be afraid to try to introduce something that you might not be familiar with. And because I feel like when you get stuck on a problem, that's when you're going to learn, because you have to then, debug your system, look up like obscure problems that have like, 2 upvotes on Stack Overflow. You have to find like the obscure tutorial that has like 100 views on YouTube. It's like at these obscure niches of topics that like I feel like the true learning, at least for me, like that's when it just like clicked. You know what I mean? Like I feel like for me, I can read documentation 100 times and it just does not stick. But as soon as like I go into like the code, like yeah, first time it doesn't stick, second time, but then it's like I encounter this weird bug, and then I read like the most obscure response on some random thread that I've never on some random site that I've never even been to, and then it just like clicks out of just nowhere. Like somebody just worded it a certain way, and it just made sense. If you ever have had that experience, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And that's like, if I could summarize software development in a nutshell, it's literally that. It's just like you eventually something just clicks, and then you're able to make a system, or just make something you want. And I feel like to me, that's why system design is so important. And that's why it's so important to learn in 2025, because I feel like it's going to help you advance in your career. It's going to help you make more quality stuff. But it's honestly just going to help build your confidence, because once you start to feel like you can do it, then you're just gonna take off from there. So I feel like, we should all get excited about it because we're all trying to learn this stuff, right? We're all trying to go to the same goal, right? Just to advance in our careers. And I feel like it's important that we be supportive of each other and share resources that have been helpful for us. So that book has been helpful for me. Again, web scalability for the startup engineer. But honestly, my biggest advice is just to read as much as you can, and read a broad range of read about a broad range of topics. That's very important. So if there are any books that you all have read that you've found to be helpful, let me know because that's what it's all about, just sharing and helping each other. So thank you all for watching. I'll see you in the next one.